as in today's review is a little bit something different from me and a little bit special. So for the first time ever, I am looking at a Hornby super detailed Great Western Castle class. And in the past I have had the older tooled ones. I had the Ringfield motor in the Loco, which weren't great, and I've also had an Airfix one that I've still got in my collection. This is the first time looking at a super detailed, up-to-date modern one, and this is a special model. So it's done by Hornby. Like I said, it's a castle class, and it's part of the Big 4 Centenary that Hornby did in 2023. There's only 500 of this model, and this is the Great Western Castle. The number of the castle, or the running number of the castle, is 4074, and it's Codcott Castle, if I got that correct. The product code is R30272, came out in 2023, and it is era free. It has a 5-pole screw round motor, and it also has a 21 pin, I believe, connection if you want to chip it. Like I said, this is my first time looking at a super fat detail castle, and from here it looks amazing. It does look a little odd, if I'm honest with you, with the smaller tender that I'm not used to with bigger engine. I'm used to the 5 or 4 gallon tenders that Great Western did. So this will be my take on the Great Western Castles. So let's get into view and see if they are any good, shall we? So let's talk about the packaging this comes in. I was expecting it to come in the usual slip cases that Hornby do for these slightly older models. But no, it came in their brand new styled hard box with foam in the inside. The box is well presented. On the side you do have the other centenary stuff they have from the LMS, the LNER and the Southern, with a few bits of history. On the front, it's, like I said, well presented. You have a picture of the model, and it's in this hard cardboard. Nicely done by Hornby. Now let's move on to what's actually inside the box. So you do get a certificate, and I think mine is 154 or something like that out of 500, and it is on quality paper. You also get a manual. These manuals are the usual stuff by Hornby. The front page is what it is, what model you've got, the running hints, tips and that sort of stuff. Very basic stuff, but very important stuff. And then on the centre page we have where to lubricate, where to add detail parts if you want to add them, and what you can and can't add for certain things. We also have DC ready where it is. I think it's in the tender. It's a 21 pin, I believe, and a few other things. On the back it's basically spares and repairs and your brake rigging for the Loco and tender. It's a very short manual, but very basic and very important. Now on to the detail bag. The detail bag, for me, there was a surprise in there. So we got the usual, like I said, brake rigging. We also got the chain and hook, which if you add that you can't add the front coupler, which is also in the bag. We have some vac pipes or steam pipes as well in there. And we also have, in a separately sealed bag inside, we also have some etched metal name or number plates for the side of the cab. And now move on to the front of the locomotive. So the front of the locomotive and the back of the locomotive do have sprung buffers, and they are metal. It's a nice touch, but like I said before, they are a little bit pointless in double O unless you're using ting links. On the bogie itself, we do have a place for your NEM coupler, which is in the bag. I believe the pocket is in the bag as well. It should be just an easy fit on. We also have some guard irons to knock stuff off the tracks. The buffer beam itself and shanks, they are in red with rivets on. We also have the number of the model on the buffer beam as well in the Great Western writing, which is 4074, if my eyes are correct. Again, crisply printed on there. Next to that, we do have a hook and some chain links already there. We also have a vac pipe or a steam pipe applied in the Great Western style. And on the buffer beam as well, there is quite a lot of rivets dotted around as well. Moving on up, there's a lot more rivets on top of the running plate at the front. We have the usual 3 lamp irons in the usual places. Again, we have rivets around them. We do have some cylinder work sticking out. Again, this is correct for the Castle class. Again, all this is in black. I believe there is a step dotted around too. On the smoke box door itself, nothing is picked out. It's all in black. The smoke box dart is separately applied. I think we have a lamp iron there or some sort of valve at the side. We also have, I believe, a metal handrail going round. And then we come to the usual Great Western style chimney. There possibly is a few rivets dotted around as well around the edge. As we now move to the sides of the locomotive, there is a difference, like with most locomotives. So the other side, this being a Great Western, does have a steam pipe and some other piping where the handrail is going around along the boiler. That isn't on this side, and some of that is separately applied as well. We also have some more equipment, I think, for the reverser that is around there, that is metal. And there's also some stuff extra against the cab around there that's not around this side. The only differences that I can see, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what they are. The reverser itself, I believe, is metal that goes behind the nameplate. So around this side, just below with the S-bend, the pipe going up from the cylinder up to the smokestack, we do have, I think, 2 holders there for some more lamp irons. I don't think they're around the other side, but they are separately applied and I think they are metal. And if you look closely at the cylinders themselves, at either ends they are a shiny metal, which is correct. I have seen some in black, but the shiny metal ones look wonderful. We also have some wonderful bogey work under there. You can tell it's a castle because it doesn't have any axles on the outside, which makes it a king, if I have this correct. Again, there's lots of rivets and everything there. So this is in the Great Western Green. I think this is 1923 condition originally. We do have boiler banding. Again, it's orange, black and orange, which looks fine to me. I can't see any blemishes or any mistakes. Where the chimney is, it's not in matte like some locos are today. We have a separately applied hand rugging all the way around, which I've mentioned. We also have some washout plugs. Again, we have some of that lining against the washout plugs. The splashes themselves do have separately lining on too. The centre one does have the name of this fine locomotive, and that is Cadcott Castle, I believe. Again, that is metal, and I think that is Hetch. Feeling it, it's cold and it does bubble up where the letters are, so I'm guessing it's Hetch. There's a pipe going up to the safety valve, again on both sides. That is separately applied by the look and feel of it. It's very delicate. If you look between the front splasher and the nameplate, you can just, and I mean just, see a little bit of the chassis or the motor, just a tiny bit. It's not too noticeable, but once you know it's there, it is a bit off-putting, but it's very tiny. Are you going to notice it's going around? Probably not, but I just thought I'd mention it. And then between the pipe going up to the smokestack and the front splasher, if you look closely enough, there is some inside motion there, not been picked up, but Hornby have gone to trouble of putting it in there. I'm not sure if it's meant to be red or not, but at least it's there. This is a collet design, if I have my facts correct, and it is a 460. Like I said, we do have lining on the cylinders. Again, I also think we have the drain cocks as well. They have been painted there on there too. The motion is Great Western. It's very simple. Again, it's all in metal and it's all correct. I believe the crosshead sliders, they are flared, if I have that correct. And I also believe the axles have been covered up in black with the main driving wheels, or all the wheels. Again, everywhere you look, there's tons and tons of rivets on the chassis and on the front. As we move over now to the cab area itself, the cab area itself is lined. We do have the number of it. If you wanted to make it more Hetch, there's some in the detail bag. We have a handrail going up the side. We have glazing in one of the windows, which is correct. We also, I think, have glazing on the cab steps too. I think there's a classification in there as well. And then we get to the roof. As we now move on to the part that people look forward to in a modern day review, and that is the cab detail. And saying this model is stunning. Everything there has been painted. I even think the water gauges have acrylics in there to make it look like water. The dials have numbers on a white background. All the piping is correct. There's so much detail in there. We also have glazing in there. I'm not too sure if it's a bar or separately applied, but again, there could also be wood flooring in there. There is a metal foreplate that goes up and down. It's a good touch from Hornby. As we now move over to the front of the tender, the front of the tender has a few rivets on there. We also have some buffers. I'm not sure if these buffers are sprung, but it would make sense for the front of the tender to have buffers connecting to the locomotive. We have fireman's tools in there. I think we have a water scoop handle, and I think the brake one's actually inside the cab. We have the chute, we have some fireman's tools in there, and I think there's also some other details as well. It is a highly detailed front of the tender and the cab. As we now move on to the side of the tender, both sides of the tender to me are exactly the same from the side. So we do have steps at either end. Again, I think these could possibly be lined from where I'm looking at it. We also have some axles and springs, and we have the metal wheels. If we move on up, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. I'm used to seeing a castle with the big, I think it's a 5,000 gallon tender the Kings have. But no, this has got the small one, which looks a bit like a Dean tender, the ones you get in Dean Goods. Again, this is in the 1923 condition. We have the Great Western, and then we have a crest in the centre of that word. We have lining all over it. We have separately applied handles at the cab side and at the end of the tender as well. The one at the cab side does bend up. It does look a little bit unusual with this style tender, but I'm guessing it's correct from Hornby's research. And the tempo printing and the printing on it is wonderful. As we now move on to the back of the tender. Like I said at the start of this detail part, the back of the tender does have metal sprung buffers and they are round matching the front, and they are metal as well. We have the coupling already applied here, and I think there's some lamp iron or guard iron to knock stuff off the tracks. We have the buffer beam and the buffer shanks again are in red, and I believe there's a few rivets dotted around. There is no number on the back of the buffers like these on the front. There is a hole for your hook and chains that are in the detail bag, and then we have a steam pipe or vac pipe already applied to the model. As we move on up just a little bit, I'm unsure if the lamp irons are actually on the buffers or just below, or just above the buffers. Again, they're picked out in black. We have steps either side. We also have, I think it's a water capacity plaque on there, with some lining around the outside, which I believe is orange, black and orange. And like I said, there are steps as well. And I think there's a lamp iron at the top. As you can tell, this is quite a short tender. As we now move on to an aerial view of the tender itself, let's start in the usual place, which is where the water filler cap is. We do have a water filler cap. We do also have a set-applied handle on there. In the corners of the side of the tender, there is some hook eyes, I believe they're called, to tie tarpaulin down and stuff like that. They are moulded on. We also have a big dome. Again, I'm not too sure what this is for. Is it for air or for the water? I am really unsure. Then we have a support, and then we come to the coal load. The coal load itself, I'm 99% sure is removable, but I can't seem to get it out, but it is moving. Again, the coal load isn't too bad. It's not shiny or anything like that. The chunks are just about correct. Down one side, we do have a slot, I think, for your fireman tools, and there's also an eye again. I think it's possibly for more fireman tools. We have green toolboxes, and then you can see some more of the fireman's tools that he uses to operate the locomotive, and there's some other equipment there as well. Now on to an aerial view of the loco itself. Let's start in the usual place, which is the cab roof. The cab roof itself does have a few rivets on. It is in black, but there is no vents. I think this is correct for the model. Maybe later in life it did have the vents, but again, it looks superb. I believe we have plastic whistles that are next, but there's no protection behind them like there's on some Great Western ones. Then we come to the parallel boiler or tapered boiler. Again, we have a few lining on there. We have the washout plugs, and then we come to the safety valve, which I mentioned before. It doesn't look too bad. I think Hornby got it correct. It's not too shiny, but it's not too dull. For me, it looks about right. Everywhere you look on here, there is some lining. Everywhere you look, there's lining everywhere, and it's orange, black and orange. Either side we have a handrail, and the other side does have a steam pipe. There's a few marks dotted around on the boiler itself. I'm not sure if that's moulding marks or marks that the loco actually had in real life. Like I said, I'm no expert, so I can't confirm or deny this. And then as we get to the chimney itself, as again, I'm not sure if it's metal or it's done wonderful. We have the usual Great Western style chimney, but just in front of it we do have a line of rivets, and from this angle you can see a lot more rivets dotted around the front of the locomotive. Like I said at the start, everywhere you look there is just rivets, and then you get to the Great Western style buffers. And as we now do an underneath look at the locomotive itself. So let's start at the front where the bogie is. The bogie does have quite a lot of play, and that is great. I don't think it picks up, but if you look closely enough at the drain cocks that are there, one side it's a bit broken. I think the wheels have hit it at some point, which is a shame. Like I said before, we do have the silver. It's either good painting or it's metal from the cylinders. And if you look close enough, it does go under the bogie and it does connect to the other one, the other side. Again, that's a great bit of detail that Hornby have gone into it, which most people are probably not aware of, or they won't see when it's running. I believe it's the 3 driving wheels that pick up by a copper strip, which I don't mind, it works for me. And I think it's the centre wheel that is geared. Again, that would make sense why I could see a little bit of the chassis block or the motor sticking out just behind the nameplate. But it's well hidden. If you don't know it's there, you ain't going to see it. And it's 3 screws to take off the base gear plate, and I believe it comes off in one go, but it could be hardwired. I am unsure. To take off the body itself, again it's in the instructions, I think you have to take off the first pony truck, and then it's the screw between the cab steps, I believe. We also have holes here for the detail, for the brake rigging, and the sanding pipes have already been added, and the brake shoes do line up with the wheels. If you look closely enough, you can see some moulded on or slightly separately applied piping, which is all underneath this model. Hornby went to a lot of trouble. And then we have some gold piping, which again I think is moulded on underneath the steps. And finally we come to the loco tender connection and the underneath of the tender. Like I just said, if you look closely enough underneath the steps of the cab, you can see some gold piping, which I think is all linked up to each other, all makes sense. Again, that's a great touch from Hornby. It is the old-fashioned but more reliable in my opinion. Metal drawbar with 2 screws and a plug. I am in favour of this rather than the push-fit connection. From any manufacturer, I don't care who it is, I prefer this arrangement to the push-fit ones, because the push-fit ones, for someone who has issues with the hands, are a lot harder to put together. I'd rather the model just comes out together as it is. That's how I like it. Again, we have a few wires going over. I'm sure if Hornby wanted to add a smoke generator in this or a flickering firebox, whatever, they could do a retool of the chassis just to fit it in, because I understand it's got to be a push fit for that sort of equipment. We have 6 tender wheels which all pick up with a copper strip. Again, it's reliable. We have a couple of screws to take off the base keep plate. We also have a pipe going across between the first and middle wheel of the tender. Not quite sure what that is. And then we have a water scoop. There's also holes here for your brake rigging, which is in your detail bag. I believe it's a 21 pin connector if you wanted to DC fit this. Again, it's in the tender and you have to take the tender shell off to do it. And then you come to the buffers and the NEM pocket at the end. So yeah guys, that's it on the track. So next up will be the usual second radius and points test. Hornby do say it can do second radius. So let's find out, shall we? Not bad at all for this ready model. What we're talking there, 27. And now backwards. It is smooth at these speeds. It looks quite good. No issues going backwards. Let's look right down. So yeah guys, if I'm honest with you, managed that pretty smooth and quite easy actually. Can do second radius and it can do points as well, which is quite impressive. So next up will be some slow speed and I'll find it a train to pull and I'll see you at the end. So here goes. Smooth. Very smooth. What's that, just about the 20? Very well, very nice. So guys, that's the end of the running session and the review. Before I give my opinion, I'll tell you what it was pulling, which was a Hatton's 6-wheeled full brake, some Hornby Railroad Pullmans, and a Alaniar Observer coach, just to make it a little bit more posher. I don't have the Pullman Observer coach because Hornby don't make them anymore. So yeah, pricing. So when Hornby announced their 2025 range, I saw the price of the castle they were releasing, and it is £230. And I remembered that somewhere on the internet or model shops had the centenary version, cheaper than that. And I really wanted the castle, so I looked on Kerno's website, the only place that had one left, and I paid £200, which for a model that's 15 years old, for me, is the limit. Going off Hornby's YouTube channel, it says it's 15 years old. £200 is the limit when you compare it to the Manners from Dapple and the Kyo scale. They are cheaper than 200 for a DC ready one. So 200 is my limit. So let me give you my opinions on the model. So for me, it's a stunning model, ran well, second radius points. Hornby have gone to a lot of trouble with the details. That's the design team and the management at the time. They went to a lot of trouble with the details. Like I said, okay, the inside motion isn't red. I'm not sure if it's meant to be. And if you just look closely enough, you can see which I think is the motor block or the chassis. In there, only if you look closely enough. It's almost like one of them bloopers on a TV show or film. If you look closely enough, you will see it. It's not as bad as the 28XX that Hornby released. It's not as bad as that, but you can just see it if you look closely enough. I just thought I would point that out. Like I said, £200 is my limit on this because of the Kyo scale manuals and the Dapple manuals. That's the reason why it's my limit. If the tooling is 15 years old, surely it still shouldn't be this high, but I understand Hornby have a lot of overheads to put in place. Could Hornby update this to bring it up to 2025 standards? Yeah, easily done. Going off their live streams that they did for the range announcements that they did in 2025, easily could update it with a push fit tender connection, flipping firebox and a smoke generator. That's why you have a push fit, because I think it was Carl Hart said the push fit is basically to help get all the wires and stuff across, mainly for the smoke generators and the sound and decoders, stuff like that. So Hornby could easily upgrade the chassis and maybe hide the motor just a little bit more, but for me, in its current form, it has a lot of pluses. I like the older style loco tender connection. I like the loco to come and tender to come out the box together instead of the two bits that some manufacturers do. I find that a little bit annoying. The cab detail is wonderful. The cylinders with the lining and the chrome look, I think it's a chrome look or silver look, is wonderful. The detail that's underneath the loco that you're not going to see when it's going around is superb. For me, £200, like I said, is my limit. Like I said, it runs well, it can do points, and it can do second radius. What more could you ask for? So this was my take on a super detailed Hornby Great Western Castle Class.